July 4th, happy Independence Day. I lost $5,000 this morning. A little bit more than that, actually. And it was all my fault. I should have known better. This is a follow up video to yesterday's video about mistakes, and I just, felt fitting to, continue on with that instead of doing another presentation critique. You know, I'm having a lot of mistakes lately, and that's kind of the way I live my life. I talked about that Niels Bohr quote yesterday. An expert is a man who's made every mistake possible in a very narrow field. And boy, the funny thing is, the mistake I made is a real noob mistake. And just got to kick myself and laugh. I'm going to get into that story in a bit here, but, a couple things happen. I talked yesterday about how I have this plumbing issue that I'm fixing, and I have a temporary repair. This temporary repair requires, the problem is basically a couple of pipes with my pool plumbing. They need to be joined together, and there's a proprietary piece of equipment I have to order. And so in the meantime, I went to Ace Hardware. I bought this rubber coupling, and it has a metal sheath with some hose clamps. And if you ever worked with hose clamps before, you know they're very sharp. And yesterday I talked about how I cut my fingers, both fingers. You might be able to just barely see it. There we go, a little bit better there on that one. And I was remarking about how it's going to be a real problem that if I just would have taken 30 seconds to grab some gloves, I wouldn't have had the problem. And now I'm going to have these cuts on my fingers. I'm using keyboards and mouses and mice, and it hurts. It does hurt a bit. But I had a bigger problem with these fingers this morning. I was out on a bike ride. It's one of my hobbies. You're going to find that I have a lot of different interests in life. And I was way out, far away from home on this ride with a bunch of other guys. And boy, we got to this spot where it goes uphill, and I was feeling real good, you guys. And I went to the front and started just pushing, and within 30 seconds, it was just me and four other guys. There was probably 30 guys in total, and we just pulled away from everybody. And I noticed something was up. I noticed that my rear tire was getting flat. I ran over a rock just a little bit before that, and I thought I was okay, and then here we go. I noticed I was getting a flat, so okay. I have a spare, and this is a little esoteric. The kind of bike I ride some old school technology called tubular wheels, tubular tires. And these tires, they provide a wonderful ride, but you actually glue the tire on, right? It's not like most tires that you're used to probably using where there's an inner tube separate from the tire. They're kind of one full thing, right? It's sort of this toroid shape. So you have to glue these bad boys on, and so I carry a full spare tire, and it's pre-glued, ready to go. So I was like, okay. I pull off the side. I knew I wasn't going to catch the group. Again, they're gone. They stop in a bit, and I could catch up with them later. I go to put on the spare, and I haven't touched this spare in a long time. And I've used it maybe once or twice, and I put the spare on. I use my little CO2 cartridge to get some air in there really quickly, and immediately I hear a tss coming out of my spare. It was punctured as well. Oh, jeez. When it rains, it pours, you guys. And so there I was, and I knew I was stuck. At that point, and nobody else rides these kind of tires anymore. This is old school technology. So what did I do? I ended up calling a Lyft, and thankfully, the woman who picked me up was a veteran, and we had a good discussion. She was telling me about her life, and and I can't complain. She has a metal in her body from over in the war, and has a lot of health problems from that. So who am I to complain, right? Oh, a flat tire. I'm always thinking about that issues. Who am I to complain? And maybe a fitting for today on July 4th. I often think, boy, am I lucky to just be born in this country. I've traveled all over the world. And not by tour bus, not on with some guides. I do it by myself a lot of times, and I like to do it not spending a lot of money. Sometimes I work overseas as well. Sometimes I take a bike and ride my way around the country. And you get to meet people that way. You get to really see the culture, right? I'm not really interested in museums. I'm really interested in more grocery stores, right? That's where the culture is. That's where the people are. So I think about all those travels and when I come home, how lucky I am to be here. And a lot of my friends who have traveled a lot, they feel the same way. I think the more you travel, you realize coming home to this country, it's wonderful. So, my little flat tire issue, well, how does this come back to the cuts on my fingers? Well, when you're trying to get a tire off, a glued tire off of a rim, well, you have to wrench it off a bit. And boy, that didn't feel good on my fingers. So that mistake I made yesterday compounded to today. I had to laugh at myself for that. What can you do? And the lesson with, I think, yesterday's mistakes is these are learning opportunities. You just got to get up and go on. And that's what I'm hoping to do. But I don't know if you're as hard-headed as I am, but I tend to make a lot of mistakes. And sometimes I repeat the same mistake over and over, thinking this time it'll work out. This time it will. And then this morning, oh boy, I was feeling real good the past couple of days. Another hobby of mine. I don't want to get in too much details, but I'm someone who I realized a long time ago has a high tolerance for risk. Yeah. Maybe part of the bicycle thing. I race bicycles. I race motorcycles. And so that risk curve, you think about it, I like to hang way, way out on that risk curve in various aspects of my life. And that really bit me this morning where I lost that $5,000. It was like $5,165 and some change, something like that. And I was thinking about that issue. I was thinking about when in my life can I think back to where I first started to take on risk? Because, when I was younger, even all the way until I was maybe in my 30s, I didn't really think of myself as a big risk taker. You just live your life through your own eyes. And so it really didn't become apparent to me until around that time I started to recognize my peers and look around and say, And I thought back to when I was young. I remember when I was around 12 years old, I had a friend who was a little bit older than me, 16. And, boys, 12 versus 16, that's kind of a big difference there. And I used to hang out with this guy a lot. And in Pennsylvania, I lived near a quarry. I don't know actually what they were quarrying there. It might have been coal or something like that. But it was at the top of this ridge. This is the Appalachian Mountains. There's the top of the ridge that I kind of lived near. And I remember going with my friend. His name was Eddie. He loved to play basketball. He was very good at basketball. And he'd always just wreck me at basketball. But he was older. And I remember he would like to get me into some sticky situations. We one day rode our bikes up to that quarry. And we were just walking around it and getting real close to the edge. So close at one point that... looking over that edge, if you fell off, you were going to die. It was probably 200 feet, sheer vertical drop. And I remember I slipped right near the edge, and I remember grabbing onto a literal tree root. This is like something out of a cartoon, like a Roadrunner, Wile E. Coyote cartoon type thing. And I remember grabbing on it, and luckily then I grabbed onto this root, and my friend luckily pulled me, yanked me up over the precipice. I don't remember being really scared at that point. It just seemed like, we're just doing what we do, We used to explore, just wander around. And so that's kind of the first thing I remember about being involved in risky behavior. And I think for young boys, maybe par for the course. And many boys will eventually grow out of that and get a level head on them. Me, I don't know. I tend to live in the risk. So, yeah, I'm involved in some investing, and I like to hang out far on the right side of the risk curve. Where you're seeing your portfolio change by 100% overnight sometimes. And that happened recently. It happened actually just a couple days ago. Now, boy, I was flying high. I was feeling great. And I had to go just a little bit further. And it's so funny because I think about what I was doing, and it's a little, again, it's a little esoteric, but effectively I was trying to eke out like another 10%, and it involved some OPSEC, some operational security issues that I was a little lax on, you know. And it's silly because I've been involved in this stuff for, we're pushing close to a decade now. And I think the mistake I made this morning, what really gets me, the mistake I made this morning was something I would not have made, the mistake I would not have made 5 years ago. But I think maybe I'm so complacent that I thought, I'm good. Nothing's going to happen to me. I'm good. And that's what really bites me here. The money is one thing, and if I zoom out, it's not that big of a deal. It really isn't. What really irks me about my own behavior, and this is what I've been ruminating. I have been ruminating over this and on this really all day, is the type of mistake I made. I thought I'm not going to make that kind of mistake, and yet I did. That's what's really getting me. It makes me think about other mistakes like that. In my teaching, I've done this a few times where maybe there's some abstract concept. I really can't think of something off the top of my head, but I do know this has happened where, something I seem to have learned a long time ago, I had forgotten. And it's something simple. And then I make the mistake again. Maybe a reminder. I wonder if you guys ever do that, if you feel like those sorts of things happen to you. And when it does, it reminds me of the concept of the grind. It really feels like life is a grind sometimes. I think back to when I was younger, and I thought, boy, if I could teach at a university, right? And my background is physics. If I could teach physics at a university, like, I've made it. Life goal accomplished. Sounds great. My ego is just would be wonderful to do that. And it happened. And you know what? After it happened, I actually got to see behind the scenes of working in academia at that level. And it wasn't all that it's cracked up to be. And that seems to be a common theme too. That people talk about it's not the destination, it's the journey. Yeah, that's part of this process, I suppose. So here I am, July 4th, minus $5,000. We'll set off some fireworks for that tonight. The grind continues. So what did I do? What's the follow-up to this? I'm not one to lay down. I think that's a really key lesson that I've learned from a lot of mentors and a lot of YouTube guys that I follow and gals that I follow. Sometimes, when it rains, it pours and it turns into a flood, and you feel like you might be drowning, and you just gotta keep swimming along. And so, after that happened this morning, a few hours of me, ruminating and kind of beating myself up mentally. And then you know what I did? I shored up my OPSEC. I got back in there, back in the bullpen, you might say. And I said to myself, you are going to get that money back and then some, right? So I put in the extra work this morning. It's going to take some time to come to fruition. Lady Luck be with me. And we'll see how that plays out. But I'm feeling confident, At the end of the day, all I can do is rely upon myself. One thing I learned as an adult is, especially as a man, no one's coming to save you. Nobody. It's just you. I think that notion has hit me harder than ever recently. I think back, who really loves you unconditionally? I think my mom did. I think that might be it. And she passed away some years ago. So now it feels like I'm on my own. Certainly, I have friends, I have loved ones, but you, sir, you're on your own. That's it. At the end of the day. So we'll see what happens. More mistakes will be made. I'm going to get knocked down for sure. And I will get back up. And I hope you do too. Feels hard out here in this world, I think, for everybody lately. It's not getting easier, strangely. It seems like the world's supposed to get easier. I thought that was the thing with progress as time goes on, and it seems harder and harder. I think about my students, and I often joke with them that when I was getting or trying to get into university, the requirement was, they ask you, the interview was sort of like, are you still eating dirt? If your answer was no, it's like, okay, you're in. That's it. These days, do you have a 4.0? How many internships do you have? Have you volunteered? What about clubs? And then maybe you're waitlisted. It's a competitive world. So you're going to get knocked down, and I hope you can get back up. Well, I'm going to get back up, and I'm going to get back on it right now. I'm going to get back on that grind and move forward. It's the only way. Happy 4th of July.